Hello, welcome to another video. Today we'll be working on the KTM SuperAdventure 1290. We're going to be taking this front wheel out and taking this tyre to get changed. So I'm changing this tyre because it has got quite a large sort of chamfer feathered edge on the side and getting down to the wear limit here and along here. So that's ready for a change. So what we're going to do is whip this front wheel out and then take that to the shop with the new tyre and get that changed out. With the bike on its centre stand, we're going to use a front paddock stand to get the front wheel off the ground. But before we do that, there are some pinch bolts there. They will need to be loosened to allow the spindle to pull through. So I'm going to loosen those off now and then get the front wheel off the ground with the paddock stand. Once the spindle's out, we're likely to find that we need to remove a caliper in order to get the rim past. I'm going to remove both of my calipers just to make it easier, and it's only 2 bolts anyway, so we'll get those removed so that the calipers can be moved out of the way and then the wheel can pass through easier. To get the front wheel off the floor, we're using this paddock stand that just hooks round at the bottom, so you can see why we did those pinch bolts first. And then we just push this down, and that's the front wheel now off the ground, suitable height to be able to get the spindle out, the brakes off, and then get the wheel out. To take the caliper bolts out, it's a T45 Torx bit, and they should just come straight out like that. Now both calipers are off, we'll use the 32mm socket to loosen the wheel spindle bolt. We now have to put the bolt back in ever so slightly and then give it a tap with a rubber mallet just to start the other side. That'll just knock the spindle out enough to get hold of it to pull it out. It seems it's not just an easy case of pulling it out from this side, that's still quite tight in there, you can't just pull that out. So I'm going to continue knocking it through from the other side. Just use something like the small end of a screwdriver, something plastic or soft rather than metal so you don't damage the threads. God damn it, it's still quite tight. So it's all the way withdrawn from one fork leg. It's just the other fork leg now, which it seems to be still quite stiff in there. So we'll just continue driving that through until we can get the spindle out. I think the official tool you would use for this would be called a podger. Right, we're getting there now, we're getting there. And here we go. So what we saw there coming out as well was the spacers. So that spacer goes in there, like so. And the other one was from the other side. But that is the spindle now out. So we should be able to just withdraw the wheel. The wheel just walks its way out, or rolls its way out now, like so. And that's the wheel out. Whilst the bike's away at the shop, I'm just going to put this back through there, put these spacers back on so that I know where they came from, which orientation, and then they won't get lost. So here we are at Bridgegate Motorcycles. Dan Stewart's going to change the tyre for me, put that on the rim, and we'll get that back on the bike later on this afternoon. Hey up! Another bike to add to the fleet, the Vosges 300 Rally. We'll be able to compare that against the 800. Right, it's been a couple of hours. We've now got the wheel back with the new tyre on. We've also gave the wheel a good clean. They look awesome in orange, but they are a nightmare to keep clean, especially in the middle bits. So I've gave them a clean with some wheel cleaner and some degreaser and things. And I've also done the inside of the forks and the brakes. So now it's just time to put the wheel back in, put the spindle back in, and bolt the calipers back on. And then not forgetting, last but not least, to do the pinch bolts in the bottom. You have to remember to put the wheel spacers back in, which we've done. And then we'll get this balanced in there. Push the wheels back through. This spacer just wants lifting over there. I've just put a tiny bit of grease on the spindle. It's not the grease I would normally use. I don't have that here at the moment. You've got to drop your wheel spacers probably about 5 times before you actually get them in, just as part of a good look. So that's the wheel in now, so it's there or thereabouts. This needs knocking through, but we need to make sure that it's fully lined up on the other side so that the spindle will go all the way through. So I'll show you what I mean by that. That needs to be aligned so that the spindle will knock through. So we'll get that on the other side and just knock that through until it pops through there. So that's now through there. We can put this greasy badger back on. Tightening this up should pull the spindle back through. You can see the gap in there. As we tighten that up and pull that spindle through against its spacer, that should make everything back in its correct place with the spacers in. I did check before putting the wheel in, but I think I should mention some tyres have rotational arrows on them, so make sure that one, they're mounted correctly on the wheel, and two, you fit them the right way onto the bike. We'll put the brake calipers back on now, so just feed the disc in between the pads and into a location like that, and then we'll just put those bolts back in loosely on both sides, and then we'll go through and torque everything up. One side done loose, ready for torquing, and then we'll get this side on. So just like that. So now all the bolts are back in and just loosely nipped up. We'll go around with the torque wrench and torque these, so the axle and the caliper bolts to 45 Newton meters, and then the pinch bolts underneath at 15 Newton meters, which we'll do once the paddock stand's removed. Right, I've set my torque wrench to 45 Newton meters, and I'll do the spindle bolt first. Guess what? It's just turning. So what we'll do is we'll do the pinch bolts in the bottom, and then we'll nip this up last. Schoolboy error. But it won't stop us doing the brake caliper. And do the other side. Right, so now it's going to be safe to lower the bike off its paddock stand. We'll take the bike off the stand, just leave it on the center stand, and then we can do the pinch bolts in the bottom. Now we can do the pinch bolts in the bottom and finally torque that spindle. Don't forget to wind your torque wrench back down to 15 Newton meters for this. You could easily strip these bolts, so only do them. That is not very tight at all. That's enough to pinch that, and then we can now tighten up this side to the right torque, the 45, and then lastly we'll do the pinch bolt on this side as well. With the pinch bolts torqued up on the other side, this should now allow us to tighten that, which is pretty much bang on anyway. And then the last thing to do is the pinch bolts on the bottom of this side. Remember to take this back down to 15. And there we go. Make sure to remember to pump the brakes to get the brake pads back out before you first pull the brakes on a ride, because you'll find that there's no brakes there for the first pump or two. Another tip is if you find that the wheel disc is not perfectly central to your brake calipers, you can undo these, then pump your brakes to get the pads and everything all in line, and then tighten the brake calipers up. On bikes like this with the radials where it just fits in and it is where it is, it's not so much, but I have had it on old race bikes and things where lining the calipers up to the discs can make a big difference with them binding or rubbing. These seem absolutely fine, so I'm calling that job done. So there you have it. That's a new Dunlop Mutant tyre fitted to the front of the KTM SuperAdventure 1290. If you'd enjoyed that and you'd like to see me working on more bikes, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you want to do this job yourself, you will need a 32mm socket for the main spindle, a 10mm or a T40 for the pinch bolts underneath, and then a T45 for the brake caliper bolts. Good luck, enjoy, thank you, bye bye.